It's in Book 8, at a feast at the house of Lord Alcinous in Scheria, that Odysseus is encouraged by his host to tell them his true name and to tell him about his life. And this is where Odysseus becomes himself a bard and begins telling the story of his life. And he fills us in a bit on what happened after he left Troy. We learn that the first thing he did after he left Troy was to sack some other city. He and his crew sacked the land of the Cyclones. And then they were hit by a freak storm before drifting to the land of the Lotus Eaters. And in the land of the Lotus Eaters, he and his men encountered a people who seemed peaceful, but also seemed to have a bit of a drug problem. Odysseus had to get his men back on their ship and sail away before any harm came to them, because if they ate the drug, the lotus, they would never want to come home. They would forget about home. And remember, home is an important theme in this story. So Odysseus and his men sail to an island, and just off the island is another island. They put into port there, and they notice that there's smoke rising up from what you would imagine will be houses on this island. Odysseus gets a party together, and they sail across to the other island and scout it out. And what they find there is not civilization as they would think of it, but the land of the Cyclops. Odysseus and his men visit the cave of one especially nasty cyclops named Polyphemus. And Polyphemus is interesting and unique amongst the Cyclopes because he's not just any cyclops. He's actually the son of Poseidon. Odysseus will become trapped in the cave of Polyphemus along with several of his men, and bad things will happen. Odysseus and his men enter the cave of the Cyclops just out of curiosity. He says this: "It would have been far better if I had, but I wanted to see him and see if he would give me a gift of hospitality. When he did come, it was not a welcome sight." Odysseus wants to know if Polyphemus is civilized and will give him the kind of gifts you give people when they're in your home. What kind of gifts might you expect? Food, wine perhaps, maybe even some sort of trinket. Well, Polyphemus is not going to offer these things, and a conflict will arise because of this. Polyphemus says that he has no fear of the gods and eats two of Odysseus' men whole. And it's at this point that Odysseus gives Polyphemus some wine that's especially strong, getting him drunk. And when Polyphemus asks who Odysseus is, he asks him if he's a pirate. Odysseus says he's not a pirate, but he's Outis, which is Greek for no man. After several more of Odysseus' men are murdered, they're able to shave an olive plank down while Polyphemus is sleeping and blind Polyphemus. What goes on in the oikos of Polyphemus? Oh wait, he lives in a cave. There's evidence of cheese making that's kind of civilized, but there's no meat except for Odysseus' men. There's no zgania, because Polyphemus does not fear the gods. And there's ample food and drink, but only for the Cyclops. Here we see Odysseus' men picking up a staff that looks like it's about the size of a ship's mast, preparing to blind Polyphemus. And you'll note in this that the wood that they use is actually olive wood, the same kind of wood that Odysseus hid under when he first came to Scheria. So Odysseus uses olive wood, the wood that is sacred to Athena, to blind his enemy who's trying to hurt him. Again, Athena is looking out for Odysseus. Odysseus will then use his cleverness to hide under a ram and his other men under some sheep while they sneak out of the cave. What was Odysseus' mistake as he fled from the land of the Cyclopes? Well, he couldn't resist bragging, and as he's trying to sail away, he shouts at Polyphemus, who can't see him but can hear him, that he's not Outis, he's not no man, he's in fact Odysseus, the line of Laertes, and he's from Ithaca. So he pretty much tells Polyphemus, how to dial in a curse on him if he wants to. And that'll be a factor later when Polyphemus makes a prayer to his father. I wanted to mention a couple of things that probably will come up in this week's discussion about the land of the Cyclopes. And I want you to think of it and compare it to Hesiod's notion of a golden age, where everything seems to grow in its place for men. They don't have to work to get anything they need. It's all there in abundance for them. I want you to think about this as you enter this week's discussion. Join me soon for more on Odysseus' adventures.